Hey everybody, Miss Dietrich here. We're taking a look at question number 2. Sarah's craft project uses pieces of yarn that are 1/8 yard long. She has a piece of yarn that is 3 yards long. How many 1/8 yard pieces can she cut and still have 1 1/4 yards left? All right, so the first thing is, how do we model this problem? What's the thing that we're starting out with? We're starting out with a piece of yarn that is 3 yards long, and I have that modeled here. Why are we breaking up into eighths? Because we're talking about 1/8 yard pieces. So this is going to be the best number line to use to model the problem. Let's look at this piece. How many 1/8 yard pieces can she cut and still have 1 1/4 yards left? Now let's rethink this as eighths. 1 1/4, if we turn it into an improper fraction, would be equal to 5/4. And if we rethink that as eighths, that's equal to 10/8. I have it represented here with the red line. Now what we have to ask ourselves, if this is what has to be left, then this blue piece has to be what we're using. And keep in mind, if we want to move this over here to make it easier to count, let's move it over here. So that's still the same thing. It's still 10/8. And let's move this over here so we can actually use the number line to see what this value is. So the value that we are using is 14/8. Now, how would we get that? What would be the algorithm to figure out the 14/8? Well, we would take 3, which is equal to 24/8, and we would subtract the 1 1/4, which is, remember, is equal to 10/8. And when we subtract those two things, 24 minus 10 would give us this 14/8. All right, so this is the amount that we're going to be breaking up into equal groups of 1/8, right? Because this is what's left. This is what's left, and the blue is representing what we're using. All right, so let's look at our groups of 1/8, and let's count them. Here's a group of 1/8. Here's a group of 1/8. So now we have 3. Now we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 groups of 1/8, or 14 pieces of yarn that are 1/8 yard long. Now, how would we do the algorithm for that? Well, we're going to take this amount, which recall was 14/8, and we're breaking that up into equal groups of 1/8. So that means 14/8 divided by 1/8. When you have a common denominator, all you need to do is just divide your numerators and you have the answer, which we already know to be 14. We counted and got 14. But let's say we were going to do standard protocol, which is keep, change, flip. Dividing is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal of the divisor. Keep the 14/8, change this to multiply, and flip this to its reciprocal. We would be able to reduce, divide by 8, and get 1 and 1. 14 times 1 is 14. 1 times 1 is 1. And of course, 14 divided by 1 is 14. All right, so let's recap what we did. Step 1 is to think, what is the thing that we're starting out with? In this case, we were starting out with 3 yards of a piece of yarn that's 3 yards long. We represented that here with the model. Step 2 is figure out, what do I have to do to get the amount that we used if we know the amount that's left? And the answer to that question is you take your starting amount, subtract the amount that you're supposed to have left to get the amount that you used. We modeled that. We got 14/8. Next, ask yourself, how am I breaking up this amount? We're breaking it up into equal groups of 1/8. So that means 14/8 divided by 1/8. We did the standard algorithm, or just count how many pieces, and we got 14 pieces of yarn.